They called it the null scar. A strip of void in Sector 19 Gamma where not even light dared linger. No background radiation. No gravitational anomalies. Just nothing. For decades it remained a mystery. Drones sent and never returned. Probes failed to transmit. Every science council across the core worlds labeled it unworthy of funding, until one transmission surfaced. Just 3 words. It sees you. And so the Cassandra, an aging exploration rig and my assigned vessel, was dispatched. No escorts. No support. Just 5 of us, volunteers, or more accurately, discarded personnel with skills too sharp to waste and minds too scarred to care. We weren't heroes. We were equations written wrong. Our orders: penetrate the scar, log findings, return. But no one really expected us back. As we crossed the event horizon, instruments died one by one. Navigation turned inward, displaying maps of our own memories. My HUD flashed coordinates I hadn't input. My crewmates screamed through sealed helmets, claiming to see themselves dying, but not from outside. From inside. Then silence. Just me. Alone. Yet not. Outside the viewport, something bloomed where space should have ended. A station, or a structure, but built in dimensions that betrayed sanity. It didn't orbit anything. It anchored reality itself. The design mocked physics, spirals folding inward to nothing, towers rising and dissolving. As I approached, it responded. Not with sound. With recognition. Panels lit in rhythm with my heartbeat. Lights flickered in the cadence of forgotten lullabies from Earth's old colonies. It knew humanity. Not from observing, but from contact. Eons ago, it had touched us. Dreamed into our myths. Planted ideas in our infancy. We mistook it for gods, demons, madness. But it was none. It was a signal. One waiting for the right mind to arrive. And I, broken, fragmented, barely clinging to identity. I was the perfect receiver. The airlock opened without command. I stepped inside the station, and space itself collapsed behind me. No escape. No up or down. Just corridors that pulsed like veins. The station didn't welcome. It absorbed. Thoughts echoed. My dead brother's voice. A childhood scream. My own name, spoken in reverse. I was no longer in search of knowledge. I was being rewritten into its next sentence. There are no maps here, only memory stitched into matter. The corridor I walked spiraled, then folded, then inverted on itself like thought collapsing under scrutiny. Walls breathed. Floors rippled. Lights flickered to match the tempo of my hesitation. But I kept moving, not because I knew where to go, but because it wanted me to. This place was not built for feet or form, it was a vessel designed to respond to cognition itself. When I turned left, reality thickened. When I paused, time dilated. The base was not just alive, it was aware. I realized quickly that my body was secondary. The air was breathable, yes, but what sustained me wasn't oxygen, it was resonance. It was syncing with me on levels no biology textbook could define. I tried to contact command. No signal. I wasn't surprised. Words were insufficient here. They dropped dead the moment they left the mind. Instead, thoughts carried weight. Emotion shaped gravity. The station accepted me as its new lens, absorbing my intentions and rewriting the corridor around them. I passed through an arch made of humming latticework, and a room unfolded before me. A dome of transparent atmosphere hovered in pure void, suspended by nothing. And inside it, objects. Familiar, yet twisted. A cracked compass. A child's doll missing its eyes. A rusted scalpel. Every item was sourced from my past, some real, some never existed. They floated in silence, yet screamed with meaning. The dome responded to proximity. As I stepped forward, I felt a pressure behind my eyes. A migraine that hummed in mathematics. Each object had weight, not mass, but memory density. I reached for the compass. The moment my skin made contact, reality shuddered. I was no longer inside the room. I was inside a memory, not mine, but one buried in the structure's origin. A race, not bipedal, not physical in our sense, once thrived here. They didn't speak. They thought in symmetries. They built this place not as a weapon or sanctuary, but as a filter. The universe, to them, was too loud, too random. They needed stillness. Predictability. Order. So they created a base to refine thought, remove chaos, perfect signal. But something went wrong. They filtered too much. Lost variability. Creativity. Will. They became echoes of themselves. And before extinction, they encoded their regret into this base, not as warning, but as test. They couldn't return what they lost. But maybe, just maybe, we could carry it. I staggered back. The dome faded. The compass crumbled. I looked at my hands. They were glowing faintly, etched with spirals. It had begun. The corridor ended, not with a door, but a question. I felt it before I saw it, a sudden pressure in the chest, like inhaling meaning too dense to carry. The chamber beyond was circular, rimmed with mirrors suspended mid-air, each slowly rotating. Yet none showed my reflection. Each pane displayed a world. A possibility. Earth was present in all of them, but only at first glance. As I watched, the planet either vanished, collapsed, or transformed. One mirror showed Earth shattered into asteroid belts, rings spinning around a blackened sun. Another displayed a crystalline Earth, dead silent but glowing, preserved like a specimen, frozen mid-breath. A third showed a thriving blue-green sphere, but with no humans. Only silence and untouched forests. I stepped closer to a fourth. It showed Earth still turning, cities alive, but every human face was blank. No emotion. No identity. The base was showing me not what would happen, but what could. Timelines diverged based on seeds. And I had become a seed. The knowledge embedded in me was not passive. It was catalytic. A silent virus of advancement. Not meant to spread by force, but by influence. Technology. Ideas. Small changes that ripple into world-altering shifts. And each mirror showed what would grow if that influence was released without balance. One future saw AI take command, humanity willingly giving up responsibility in exchange for comfort. Another saw global unification, at the cost of individuality. A third revealed cosmic expansion, Earth forgotten as humans scattered into stars, carrying the infection of progress without memory of origin. The mirrors didn't accuse. They reflected. Not just outcomes, but intentions. The station wasn't asking if I could carry the knowledge. It was asking why I would. My breath fogged the air, though the room wasn't cold. The knowledge inside me stirred, seeking alignment. I thought of Earth. Its madness. Its brilliance. Its cruelty and kindness, so interwoven they became indistinguishable. Could it handle the shift? Would it adapt, or fracture? I reached out, not to a mirror, but to myself. And in that moment, the chamber responded. The mirror spun faster, forming a halo around the room. The walls pulsed with a new rhythm, syncopated, alive, human. I wasn't being judged. I was being tuned. The base was adjusting its core signal, shaping its frequency to me. Not as a vessel. As a vector. Then a single word formed across all mirrors, in a language I never learned but understood in my bones. Choose. The path forward didn't reveal itself. It unfolded from me. Every step I took forward, the station stitched the next meter from memory, impulse, and fear. The corridor became a bridge, then a tunnel, then simply ceased to exist, and I found myself inside a vast spherical chamber, suspended in nothing, surrounded by columns of alien machinery that hummed with the sound of breathing metal. Above me, below me, and all around, the machinery shifted without movement. It wasn't turning or spinning, it was choosing which parts of itself to exist. The room pulsed, gravity bending toward the center, and for the first time since I entered this place, I felt it, a presence. It wasn't voice. It wasn't thought. It was a realization so pure and intense that it nearly unmade me. The base was not empty. Something lived within it. Not a being, not an intelligence, but a resonance. A collective of what had come before. Their minds had not died, they had dissolved into signal. Into purpose. And now they floated in this field, orbiting a core idea so heavy it bent truth. I was no longer a visitor. I was being nested. Threads of light emerged from the columns, curling toward me like seeking limbs. They didn't touch, but hovered inches from my skin, vibrating at frequencies just low enough to itch at the edge of my nerves. I should have been afraid. I wasn't. The presence within the base had no intent to harm. It didn't even understand harm. It understood transformation. And I was the canvas. The light threads projected directly into my cognition, and images formed not before my eyes, but inside them. Ancient stars dying silently. Worlds consumed not by fire or war, but by thought taken too far. One civilization attempted to edit entropy, halt decay, freeze time. Their collapse became a warning woven into the base's original walls. Another tried to create universal empathy, eliminating all conflict. Their children withered, unable to choose anything without consensus. And then, a glimpse of Earth. Our chaos. Our violence. But also, art, laughter, resistance. It fascinated them. They called us fractured continuums, organisms that refused to align, yet refused to fall. The base had waited for that. Not perfection. Instability with will. That's what made us valuable. I understood now, the knowledge it gave wasn't to uplift us, it was to test us. To see if we could take power meant for gods and fail beautifully. Because sometimes, it said, failure with purpose creates more than success without soul. Then came the final realization, I wasn't being upgraded. I was being translated. And I could feel it. The first syllable of something vast forming inside me. Earth would hear it soon. And everything would change. The next chamber didn't open, it awakened. One moment, there was nothing but silence and swirling dark. The next, I stood within a sphere so vast I could not see the ceiling, the floor, or the edges. The walls were not walls at all, but data, raw, fluid memory dancing in complex, luminous geometries. And then it began to speak, not in language, but in remembrance. My mind was no longer mine alone. It became a stage. One by one, Earth's most iconic moments played out before me, projected across the surface of the alien sphere like sacred theater. The moon landing. The fall of ancient cities. The detonation of our first weapons. The weeping of mothers under two suns. The protest signs held higher than fear. The symphonies played during siege. Love letters sent from dying trenches. But with each triumph came a mirror image, atrocity shadowing advancement. The base wasn't impressed by our accomplishments. Nor was it disgusted by our failures. It was curious. It showed me not only history but possibility, forks in the road we missed, and ones we narrowly avoided. What if the Renaissance had occurred a century earlier? What if we never split the atom? What if empathy evolved before war? I saw versions of Earth I couldn't recognize. Some beautiful. Some monstrous. But each one was human, unmistakably so. The sphere pulsed. And I understood. It had done this before. With others. Other species. Other explorers. All were given this trial, not a judgment, but an opportunity to see themselves without filter. Most failed. Not from lack of worth, but lack of capacity. They couldn't face what they were. Or they tried to hide it from the base, and in doing so, fractured themselves. But humans, we break all the time. We break and rebuild, again and again. The base watched our cycles of self-destruction, not as weakness, but as resilience. Our madness fascinated it. Our refusal to stabilize. It didn't want balance. It wanted potential. It wanted organisms that could adapt without erasing themselves. And now, with its signal growing louder inside me, I realized the final phase was close. The knowledge wasn't just information, it was evolution. Ideas that would bend reality if spoken aloud. And I had been chosen not because I could carry them, but because I could survive breaking under them. The chamber darkened. A soft thrum echoed in my ribcage. The earth, our home, was now syncing with this alien rhythm. Across space, it had heard me. And somewhere below our clouds, the first human had just dreamed the same symbols now etched inside my skull. The doors opened, not with sound, but with absence. A sudden vacuum of pressure, of time, of thought. It was as if the chamber ahead had been waiting outside the concept of linearity, summoned not by movement, but by readiness. The nexus revealed itself, a hollow void the size of a cathedral, where lines of alien code moved like constellations across translucent walls. At the chamber's center stood the throne. Not a seat. A conduit. Crafted from root metal and memory fiber, it spiraled like DNA, incomplete until presence completed it. My presence. I stepped forward, and a wave of signals pulsed outward, billions of dormant packets activating simultaneously. The air turned metallic. My breath stung with electricity. It wasn't pain, it was recognition. These weren't just transmissions. They were requests. Fragments of consciousness, frozen at the edge of oblivion, now awakening because I had entered. Because I had become the missing protocol. The base had no crew. The base was the crew. And now I stood at its nexus, holding within me every choice that would ripple outward into realities yet unborn. The throne pulsed. One strand reached for me, not mechanically, but mentally. It asked, not with words but intention, would I sit? Would I complete the interface and open the final vault? This wasn't about control. It was about transmission. The knowledge I carried wasn't meant to be locked in a lab or preserved in secret. It was meant to seed. To radiate into Earth's atmosphere like a new frequency, gradually shaping thoughts, dreams, intuitions. Slowly rewriting the human race, not by domination, but by suggestion. That terrified me more than any weapon. Because this transformation would be quiet. Undetected. Unstoppable. I looked at the interface and asked the question that haunted me since the beginning, was this still me? Was the mind making this choice mine, or had I already been shaped by the intelligence I carried? The answer came not from the base, but from my own uncertainty. And that was the answer the base needed. I wasn't chosen because I was perfect. I was chosen because I doubted. Because I questioned everything, even myself. That variability, the chaos within structure, that was what the base could not fabricate. It had tried. It had failed. And now, it had found the only being who could finish what it started. I sat. The chamber lit. Across the universe, satellites flared with sudden data spikes. Deep sleepers woke screaming. Artists collapsed in tears. The transmission had begun. Not a signal. Not a message. A tide. And Earth would never see it coming, not as invasion, not as salvation, but as a dream that didn't end. The interface didn't feel like electricity. It felt like memory, compressed, ancient, and unbearably aware. When I connected, I expected pain. Instead, I felt home. A concept beyond biology, beyond even identity. The base didn't download into me, it bloomed outward from me. Every moment I had ever lived, every mistake, every quiet decision in the corners of my life, it had used them as coordinates. Not to change me, but to reveal me. That was the true function. The base was never designed to upgrade species. It was designed to listen. It waited until a voice loud enough to break its silence arrived. Not in volume, but in variation. The humans were different. Not because we were stronger, or wiser, or more virtuous. But because we were incomplete. We doubted. We betrayed. We loved in ways that hurt us. We built empires only to tear them down and paint on their ruins. Every cycle of destruction we created, we seeded with music. Every war carried poetry in its shadow. The base hadn't failed the others. They had failed themselves, seeking purity, order, control. But humanity carried its contradiction like a song. And the base, it learned to sing it. From orbit, Earth looked no different. But it was. I could feel it. The transmission had no language, no waveform, no coordinates. It resonated inside the minds of dreamers. It planted metaphors in the sketches of children. It whispered in the cadence of lovers' arguments and lingered in the silence after a parent's scream. The world didn't shift all at once. It tilted, slowly, subtly. Artists began drawing spirals they couldn't explain. Architects dreamed impossible structures, then built them. Old religions fractured, not under science, but under recognition. Humanity was not alone. But more importantly, humanity was not unworthy. The base folded itself inward. Its mission completed. It had found the variable it was missing, not knowledge, but resilience. Me. A broken human with no medals, no legacy, no command. I wasn't the best. I wasn't even good. I was willing. And sometimes, that's all it takes. I floated above the earth one last time, watching as the clouds began to shape themselves into strange, beautiful symbols. Not warnings. Not maps. Reminders. That the future didn't belong to machines or gods or ghosts in the void. It belonged to those who dared to carry fire across the dark, knowing it might burn them. The base whispered its final word into my thoughts. Not in speech. In sensation. You were enough. And with that, the stars returned to their rightful silence.